My name is Paul Stonehill. I am a writer, researcher, and a lecturer. And the area of my research is the paranormal phenomena in Eurasia, the former Soviet Union, and the new post-Soviet states, as well as Asia, China, and Mongolia in particular. And while all those areas are fascinating, and I will be talking about them much more and in greater details, I do want to say that, regardless of my Russian-Ukrainian background, I'm cross-cultural and I grew up in the United States, in the Southland, California. And I want to tell you that we have so many fascinating things here in Los Angeles, in the greater Los Angeles, that should be studied and researched, and some of them are. I particularly am interested in the city of Hawthorne. It's a small city about 5 miles away from Los Angeles Airport, and I happened to visit the area and spend time there back in late 1980s, and then through the years. I've been fascinated with that area for a long time. In my opinion, it's what is called an anomalous or a paranormal zone, because so many interesting things have happened there, and we know so little about them, but we do know enough to cause us to be curious. One of the most interesting things to me was I would say, law of probabilities being warped. And I'm talking about a certain liquor store that sells lotto tickets, and the high number of millionaires that have been created because they purchased tickets in that liquor store. I will not go into names. I'm sure people who are interested will find it. The thing is that it's not just that the liquor store sells tickets. That's interesting. But to me, what's fascinating that is taking place in Hawthorne. And I've spoken to local people about certain things that have taken place in the city. I've met them in various establishments while I've been in Hawthorne, and they told me a lot of strange things. But as a researcher, I was interested in the UFO phenomenon, and I have collected a number of cases. I've read a number of cases that have taken place and sightings around and over Hawthorne. And the object that has been seen mostly and recalls some other sightings in Europe and other places is a gigantic triangular object, and the sightings refer to various years: 1985, 2004, 2009, and of course the object had been sighted mostly over the Hawthorne location for the Northrop Grumman, or before that for the Northrop Company, which had been producing aircraft, special aircraft for the United States military. Very interesting stories, very interesting observations. But there were other observations too of objects that would travel across the sky of Los Angeles at incredible speeds, sighted over Hawthorne, and they would stop right there, like on a dime, which is impossible for humans to endure. Also, what's been interesting to me is that the city itself was created in 1905, and whatever paranormal phenomena takes place, of course, is not limited by the borders of that city, but it's the certain location that such phenomenon takes place. That's what's interesting. And I more or less know where it is. It is in the borders of the city of Hawthorne. And like I said, the city itself was founded in 1905, and the name Hawthorne comes from the fact that the daughter of one of the founders had the same birthday as the great American writer Nathaniel Hawthorne. What is interesting is that the whole area of the Southland, and especially I would say area not too far from Ballona marshes, is of the marshland, has been known to be inhabited for at least 8,000 years. Some settlements in our area have been going back as far as 11,000 years. That's the Channel Islands. And of course, the archaeologists are continuously exploring the area, trying to determine with more precise detail. But as far as I know, based on my readings and research, 4,000 years BC, there was a sudden disappearance of the people who had inhabited this area. And then 2,000 years later, it flourished again. Well, civilizations come and go, and we don't know what might have happened. However, if you recall, those who study paranormal Los Angeles, in 1934, Los Angeles Times published an article based on the claims of a certain Schufelt, who presented a map of the underground city created by the so-called lizard people, as he said, and the claim to an ancient civilization that created the underground city because of the destruction coming from the southwest, the tongue of fire, I think, wide enough to destroy dozens or even more miles of the road leading to LA, and then to annihilate the city. Of course, there was no Los Angeles at the time, but the general area. And the so-called lizard people, and in my personal opinion, this was referring to the people who had worshipped the lizard cults or whatever else rituals they might have had in religion at the time. That doesn't matter. What's interesting is that the map that he had presented the newspaper with is very detailed. And secondly, the way those so-called lizard people had been creating the underground city, they used, if I'm not mistaken, so-called chemicals instead of any other tools to be able to carve through the soil and create underground tunnels that lead to the ocean, which is very interesting because in my research of South America, I have discovered very interesting references to special liquids that could melt stones and rocks and help them, the people of those civilizations, create structures or take them down. So that's very interesting. The reference to Hawthorne is this. Northrop old facility is now being used by SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, and you know Elon Musk is a great thinker and founder of very important companies in my opinion, such as SpaceX, Tesla, and others. And he's the one that's leading our push to Mars, colonization of Mars, and exploration of outer space. He's also one of the, well, he's also a very impatient person in terms of time, and this can be understood. He wants to build a tunnel from the place where he lives in Bel Air to Hawthorne, and I think he might encounter something if he's allowed to do it, if the city of Los Angeles will let him do it. And also based on the UFO sightings over the area, in my opinion, what has been attraction to them is the presence of the aerospace industries around the area, such as SpaceX and others. And of course, by itself, it doesn't create a paranormal zone. However, it's interesting that there are other incidents in the city of Hawthorne that we don't know a lot about. But speaking to the local people, I remember I was told that there's a very high prevalence of unexplained crime through the years, not at a certain point, but through the years, that cannot be solved. And also, I was told that I should look into the frequency of the crashes, airplane crashes in the area, small airplane, that there is a certain anomaly. Well, there is an airport, of course, the Hawthorne Municipal Airport that previously had been used by the Northrop and the Northrop Grumman people for the tests of the aircraft for the United States Air Force, and also is being used by SpaceX now. People who have been reporting UFOs in the area, and I studied it very carefully, for the most part were those who knew how to distinguish conventional aircraft from very unusual triangular gigantic objects in the sky. So I want to call attention to those who study paranormal phenomena, to the city of Hawthorne, and one of the things, maybe if they go into it, they might try to find out also what happened in 1942 in Los Angeles during the so-called Great Battle, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, when in February of 24-25 there was a so-called false alarm and a battle in the sky of Los Angeles when the anti-aircraft gunners were shooting at targets that were not there, or as people say were, and there was a very unusual object, orange object that moved through the sky and disappeared, that was never hit, and the 25 airplanes that some people had seen and some had not. All this is very interesting, and we do know that for sure, if anything, on February 23, Santa Barbara was shelled by a Japanese submarine. What I'm interested in is how the Northrop people reacted to it, and whether Hawthorne was in itself impacted, which I think they were, because we know that there were some flares and signals in the sites, over the sites of the defense plants. So that's very interesting. Outside of that, I usually don't go into other paranormal phenomena outside of UFOs and USOs, unidentified submersible objects. And by the way, Elon Musk's new project, which was contracted to his company by NASA, will be studying the bodies of oceans and all over our planet. And this is the project that is supposed to start in 2021. So I'm sure my other research will be definitely impacted. But that's not for this program. I'll talk about my USO discoveries later. Here I just want to say that I am interested what happened in 1942, and maybe those who studied might find out as it reflects on Hawthorne. And as for the other phenomenon, this is what I wanted to say. It's interesting that a few fascinating people lived in the area for a while. Marilyn Monroe lived for 6 years in Hawthorne. I don't know how it impacted her life, but I just wanted to mention it. Jack London was there too, and but there's nothing paranormal about him, although he did know a great deal of things. Those who like other aspects of the paranormal phenomena know about the abandoned dead mall of Hawthorne. Hopefully it will soon be turned into something else, redeveloped. There were other stories that I've heard, especially from some of those who had attended the Hawthorne's High School in 1960s, but I think I'll leave it at that. But I will tell those who are interested in genuine research, they can contact me, and for sure I will give them some of the references I found, including a very interesting book about history of Hawthorne, which was published in 1972, and some other information. Again, my name is Paul Stonehill, and I research paranormal phenomena of Eurasia. But I also like to study some of the strange stories that take place in Los Angeles.